So everybody's heard the term "jumping the shark," and it's kind of funny. I didn't realize this literally goes back to Happy Days, the show, where Arthur Fonzarelli goes water skiing and jumps over a shark. I do know that the phrase is basically meant when you basically just take something too far, right? You get too ridiculous. And the problem is certain mediums allow for you to jump the shark and have really good stories and then also switch between them, and then others don't. So if, for example, you have Batman and you look like Batman in the Dark Knight and the Christopher Nolan series, there's always this kind of concept of escalation, right? In the first one, he's fighting some bad guys. He fights, a villain who's trying to destroy Gotham. Then in the second one, there's kind of an addition of a few other villains, right? But most notably, obviously, the Joker. And then that's an escalation from the first one. It's about chaos and all that stuff. And then the third one, when he's fighting Bane, there's also Catwoman. There's, Ra's al Ghul's daughter in that one. Again, greater escalation. So it's a step up in his capabilities, what he can do. It's fine. But when you move into kind of the Nolan universe, the Zack Snyder universe, and he's fighting alongside Superman and Wonder Woman, and then in the Justice League movie, they're fighting aliens from outer space and all kinds of stuff. That's kind of jumping the shark for that character, because depending on who you are and what you like, I like a street level Batman. I like him beating up thugs, kind of being a detective, just kind of doing stuff where it just looks like a guy who's at his peak level of performance, doing things that are somewhat within the possibility of believability. Though no human could actually do what Bruce Wayne does, it's still a kind of a concept of, hey, he's like the male fantasy, almost like a James Bond character, right? Except maybe you turn the volume up to 11 and that's Batman. That being said, when he gets outside of the realm and he's fighting aliens, the next movie you make probably isn't going to be able to be about him, stopping a bank robber and beating up a couple of thugs because they were selling drugs to kids, So that is one of the difficulties I find that a lot of superhero movie franchises run into. Like, I really, really liked the first Iron Man movie, and I liked the second Captain America movie. But now, once you've gotten to the point of fighting Thanos, and there's these huge armies of superpowered beings fighting against other armies of superpowered beings, and concepts like time travel and half the population being wiped out, you can't make an Iron Man 1 movie anymore, right? Because if you look at that first one, there was this brilliant concept of like him being the first superhero in that universe. It was like everybody was like, wow, it's Iron Man. It was a big deal. There were no other superheroes mentioned there, right? I think the Hulk is mentioned at the end. I don't remember if that's the end scene that has him, but the point is, those are really, really good stories. When you start escalating to these big world-changing events, it becomes very one-dimensional in a way, because now it's just constant issue of teaming up to fight the big bad dude, right? Like Eternals ran into this problem, because when Eternals came out, basically people were going, where were they when Thanos was attacking, right? Because the event was too big. You can now never ignore that big giant event. Whereas if that movie had come out after the original Iron Man movie, people would go, oh wow, they're these superhuman beings and they're protecting the planet. And once you have armies of superheroes, you never have that kind of initial feel of that wonder of that there being an original superhero who's going to change the world and fight crime and do things like that, right? I like a lot of Golden Age stories because they're basically crime fighting stories. And whether it's The Shadow or, even like the original Spider-Man, that's kind of in the late 60s, but these characters, they had years and years of stories. When you look at the Spirit, Will Eisner basically took this guy who was, slightly superhuman, and that he was a guy who basically died and then came back to life. But his stories were kind of street level. He was getting into fist fights, he was, beating people up, but he wasn't really zipping out to outer space. And in comics, you can actually do that. You can go back and forth between, but my point is, like, this is the issue that I think those Marvel movies run into and that DC runs into, is now unless you reboot, it's just about gigantic stories where everything has earth-shattering consequences. I do like the fact that they made the Joker movie, because then that showed a different side of it, and it's acknowledging that in a way, because it's basically going, this is a different way of telling some really groundbreaking, down-to-earth, street-level stories. So I do appreciate that, and it looks like the next the Batman movie will take some of that in there too. So again, he's not fighting space aliens. I think he's gonna fight the Riddler and get back to fisticuffs. Because at the end of the day, like, when you look at the Christopher Nolan movies, Batman is fighting people, he's getting hit, he's wincing at the pain, and he's actually got this sense of fear that's going into him as he takes on this mantle of Batman. It's a lot better than when you start going in Justice League and it's like, oh, here's this dude, he's just gonna fight, parademons and not even have an ounce of fear. He's just going in there, he's just a fearless, superhuman Batman. Because it's no longer the story of a kid who saw his parents die in front of him and so swore that he would never let that happen to another little kid again, and took to defend the streets of Gotham against evil. No, now it's just this, Chad-like character who's just basically a semi-god who can do whatever he wants and can beat anybody and is faster than everybody, right? So, and again, there's room for that, but the escalation sometimes goes too quickly. And, I don't like those superhuman stories with Batman. I think he's a street-level character. So anyhow, my point about this is, I think that the movies have jumped the shark. And when you get into like international dimensions and you get into space stories and all that stuff and aliens and demons and magic, I personally feel that it takes the films not really into, it goes beyond what I consider a really good superhero movie, more into like a fantasy genre, which is fine. It's just not what I like. And so, that's probably why I get less and less excited in these Marvel movies, because I don't want to see these big events in space and time travel and different dimensions. I just kind of want to see a superhero beat up some bad guys. Well, that's my thoughts. Let me know yours.